So let's begin by looking at that question. It was November 2020. November 2020. The sitting for November 2020 was a question. We begin the question 1B. We begin with the question 1B. Question 1B. November 2020, question 1B. So let me read the question. International standards on auditing ISA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatements through understanding the entity and its environment, sets out the matter that should be documented during the planning stage of an audit. It sets out the matters that should be documented during the planning stage of an audit. So required, highlight 6 matters that should be documented when developing an audit plan. So that question wants you to identify the 6 matters that should be documented when developing an audit plan. So which are the matters that needs to be documented when developing an audit plan? The matters to be documented when developing an audit plan. So we have them. Okay, just a list of few. Those matters are few of them. So one is the planning of audit of interim financial statements. Planning of the audit of interim financial statements. Planning of the audit of interim financial statements. Planning of the audit of interim financial statements. Number 2, planning for the field visits. 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 And next one, planning for the substantive test. Planning for the substantive test on transactions and balances. Planning for substantive test on transaction and balances. Next point, planning for verification of assets and liabilities. Planning for verification of assets and liabilities. Planning for verification of assets and liabilities. Next one, next point, planning for the third party confirmations. Planning for the third party confirmations. Planning for the third party confirmations. Planning for the time and the cost budgets. Planning for the time and the cost budgets. Planning for the time and the cost budgets. Yes, Grace, how are you? You are not on November 2020. So the same sitting November 2020. Let's go to question number 2A. November 2020, question number 2A. November 2020, question number 2A. November 2020, question number 2A. So the question reads as follows. An overall auditor strategy guides the auditor in developing an auditor plan. Is guides the auditor in developing an auditor plan. At this point, you know, audit plan provides the procedures for implementing the overall auditor strategy. And the strategy provides direction, scope, and timing of the audit. So required, examine 4 matters that might be taken into consideration by an auditor when developing the overall auditor strategy. Examine 4 matters that might be taken into consideration by an auditor when developing the overall auditor strategy. So what matters the auditor will consider when developing the overall auditor strategy? Those points, we do have them on page is equal for page on page 7. They're there on the page 7. On page 7, though this handout doesn't organize them clearly, On page 7, we have those points there. So I want you to put down the following. So the matters to be considered. So you put down this, the points on that question. Number one is the nature. Nature and timing. Nature for the nature. Timing, nature timing, and extent of the process. The extent of resources. That's the first point, nature timing and extent of resources. Then below it, you write point 1, selection of the audit team. Selection of the audit team. Point 1, selection of the audit team. Selection of the audit team. Selection of the audit team. The next point under that, budget. Next point under that, budget. Number two is characteristics of the engagement. Characteristics of the engagement. Characteristics of the engagement. Characteristics of the engagement. Then point number 1 under that. Number 1 is a financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework. Financial reporting framework. The next one, industry reporting. Industry reporting. Industry reporting. Next point, knowledge of the business. Knowledge of the business. Knowledge of the business. Knowledge of the business. The next point, internal audit function. Internal audit. Yeah, that's the next point. Internal audit function. Internal audit function. And next, service organization. Service organization. Service organization. And next, computer assisted audit techniques. Computer assisted audit techniques. Computer assisted audit techniques. And next, timing of the audit work. Timing of the audit work. Timing of the audit work. And next point, availability of the client staff. Availability of the client staff. Availability of the client staff. The number 3 matter to be considered is reporting objectives. Reporting objectives. Reporting objectives. Timing and communication. Timing and communication. Timing and communication. Reporting objectives, timing and communication. Reporting objectives, timing and communication. Then point 1 under that, timetable for reporting. Timetable for reporting. Timetable for reporting. And next, communication with the client. Communication with the client. We'll have next matter, communication among the team. Communication among the team. Communication among the team. Then the last one, communication with the third parties. 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 Then we go to point number 4. Point number 4 matter to be considered is significant or significant factors. Significant factors. preliminary engagement, preliminary engagement, preliminary engagement activities, and knowledge gained on other engagements, or gained on other engagements. Gained on other engagements. The matters to be considered under that. First one is materiality. Next, assess risk of material misstatement. 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 Next, need for professional skepticism. Need for professional skepticism. Need for professional skepticism. Need for professional skepticism. And next, internal controls of the client. 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 Next, significant developments affecting the entity. Significant developments affecting the entity. Significant developments affecting the entity. Next, changes in laws and regulations. Changes in laws and regulations. Changes in laws and regulations. Then the last one, changes to accounting standards. Changes to accounting standards. Changes to accounting standards. Changes to accounting standards. So we have organized those are notes on page 7 as matters to be considered in developing the strategy. So it was not a must whereby you mention the 4, just any that falls under the 4 categories. And you see the marks are required there in that question. So now we can continue the audit planning process. We are still discussing the various steps of audit planning. Audit planning. Grace, you have the handouts. So let's continue the third part of audit. So we are moving on to auditor program. That's where we are on auditor program. That's on page 8, preparing the auditor program. So one of the tools of performing the audit procedures is an auditor program. This is a document or a working paper that give instruction to the junior staff on how they should be going about performing certain procedures. So for every item in the financial statements to be audited, an audit program shall be prepared for that particular case. Either if it's cash, we shall have a cash program, inventory program, account receivable program, payables, any expenses, revenue item, assets, liability, and equity. We shall be having respective audit programs for them. So it's just a tool for giving instruction to the auditor staff on what they are required to perform with regard to either vouching or the verification procedures. So there are 2 main categories or ways of preparing the auditor program. One there is what we call the standardized auditor program. The standardized auditor program is normally whereby now the procedures are predetermined in advance. Before we go out there to perform the audit procedures, they already stated there in the working paper. So our work is to go out and just follow the procedures the way they have been indicated in the auditor program. These programs are also uniform. That means they can be used to audit any client the firm has. If the client has, for example, from A, B, C, then they can use the same working papers to audit such kind of a client. So they save a lot of time and also cost to prepare them. The number two, we are what we call the progressive auditor programs. Progressive, they're prepared as the audit work progresses. So like, for example, tomorrow we're going to do the audit work, we prepare the procedures to be undertaken. Like that until we are able to complete the full engagement work. So for this case, they will vary from one client to the other. So let's go through this auditor program on page 8. So an audit program is a breakdown of all the audit work to be performed with respect to each item included in the financial statement. It provides for the substantive procedures necessary in the audit of financial statement. Substantive procedures necessary for the audit of financial statement. So some days when we ask what are these substantive procedures? Substantive procedures are normally performed for the classes of transaction and balances. So these are the audit procedures we do perform on the classes of transaction and balances to confirm if they are accurate, complete, and valid. So what are substantive procedures? Are procedures, audit procedures performed on the classes of transaction and balances, just to confirm whether they are accurate, are they complete, and also valid. Are they accurate? Are they complete and also valid? So one of the tools for performing the substantive procedures shall be the auditor program. Auditor program. Okay, so it provides for the substantive procedures necessary in the audit of financial statement. A separate audit program will be prepared for each item included in the financial statement. So we have a sample there for an auditor program. So name of the audit firm and also the address, name of the client and also the address, the financial period covered. Then we have an audit program for the cash. We are auditing now the cash. The certain procedures need to be applied in auditing the cash. So the audit program shall have these important columns in that document. Specific audit procedures to be done. Specific audit objectives is what we intend to achieve. Then audit findings, audit conclusion, auditor's initial, then the date. Like after the audit procedures being performed, test the control over cash payments. We test the controls over cash payments. So that means we try to ascertain the effectiveness of the internal control system are put in place. Do they maybe authorize the payments of the cash? Is the authorization of the payment of the cash? So that's what you need to confirm. So to verify that all the cash payments are valid and authorized. So if there is no such kind of a procedure, that means all the internal control system is very weak. Auditor will have to find other ways to audit such kind of transactions. The number two is count cash, counting cash. Cash is an asset, and that means what we want to confirm existence by doing a physical inspection or just counting cash physically to confirm whether it actually exists. So to verify existence and amounts available in the company. So the contents of the audit program. So what will you find in an auditor program? So what is the name and address of the audit firm? Name and address of the client company, the financial period covered by the financial statements being audited, the specific audit procedures to be carried out, the specific objectives to be achieved by each procedure, the timing of each procedure, the auditor's findings from the procedures, the auditor's conclusion based on the findings, the initial of the auditor who carries out the auditor procedures. I'll move on to the types of auditor programs. So there are two of them. Standardized auditor program, and number two, progressive auditor program. So what's the importance of having auditor program? So one, they set out the procedures that are needed to implement the auditor plan. So there are ways of implementing an audit plan. So you can see from the strategy, you go to audit plan, then you go to auditor program. So the audit plan implements the strategy. Allow the audit program implements the audit plan. So number two, the program serves as a set of instruction for the auditor staff. So the basis of communicating some of the instruction to the auditor staff. Number 3, the program provides a means of control and record of work done. They facilitate maybe the review of the work, telling how far we have gone with the conduct of the auditor procedures or the audit engagement, and also provide an evidence of the work that had been done. Next, they facilitate effective and efficient completion of the audit. 5, they force the auditor to adopt a systematic approach to the audit, very organized and a very systematic way of conducting the audit. 6, they facilitate review of the work done. Then the last one, they facilitate timely completion of the audit work. So those are the benefits or the advantages of having audit program, be it standardized or progressive audit program. So we begin with the first one, standardized audit program. So these are pre-prepared auditor programs developed by the audit firm to be used for all audits, Yes, these are pre-prepared auditor programs developed by the audit firm to be used for all audits. That means for any client the firm has, not just for only one respective audit engagement, but for all clients, auditing all clients, the audit firm has, be it 5 of them, 10 of them, 20 of them. The same audit program shall be used in auditing their financial statements items. And if we go to the advantages of standardized auditor program, 1, they save on time and cost. You just need to prepare 1 copy, then you produce the photocopies out of that. Next, the enhanced uniformity of the audit work is you have a uniform way of doing the audit. 3, they provide for cross-referencing of the work done by the auditor. They facilitate a review of the audit work. They serve as a set of the staff instruction. They facilitate planning of the subsequent year's audit. Therefore, the auditor to adopt a systematic approach for the audit, which enhance the quality of the audit. Then 8, they facilitate delegation of audit duties. Then the last point, they facilitate training of the new recruits. Then the limitations or the disadvantages of having standardized auditor program. So point 1, if followed mechanically, they will make the audit become mechanical and hence boring. Is when the staff are just following them without having a question in mind. Then those procedures are repetitive in nature. You become so bored by performing them. Number 2, they discourage initiative and use of auditors' judgment. Sometimes the staff may not question why are they performing these procedures, even though there could be some changes in the circumstances or the situations at hand. Then number 3, the client staff may become familiar with the auditor's program. And as a vendor, because already know your predetermined procedures, they know what you're coming to do. So they may also prepare themselves, maybe as a part of the cover-up measure to conceal some of the inadequacy or irregularity, because they understand the procedures will likely come to perform. The number 4, they lack flexibility to cope with the changes. And they're not very flexible to any changes in their engagement environment. The number 5, they assume that all audit clients are the same, which is not true. Clients are not the same. Clients do vary in terms of the nature of their business, in terms of maybe their accounting systems. There is that variation. The number 6, inefficient staff may hide their inefficiency in the auditor program. Then you go to progressive auditor program. So these are audit programs that are allowed to develop as the audit progresses. The auditor uses his professional skills and judgment to determine the procedures, not proceed, but procedures to perform. The procedures to perform. The procedures to perform. The procedures to perform. So you don't have the advantages and the disadvantages of progressive auditor program. So the reverse of that one, the standardized shall be there. For example, the advantages, it acquire disadvantages are progressive. Allow limitations upper, it acquire the advantages are meaning progressive. We just reverse them to give you the advantages or the disadvantages. Okay, lastly, we go to the last procedure there, which is the budgeting and staffing consideration. So you must have a budget, or the firm must have a budget. It's very important as part of their costing measures. At the end of it, they can now compare the actual against the budget and find any significant variations or the variances that needs to be investigated. Budget is also very important to help them to make good use of their valuable time. They'll be able to allocate time to their respective clients. So it's important to have the budget and take into consideration of the staff number availability, the manpower hours we're going to engage during the audit process. So what's the importance of having the time budgets in the audit? One, it enables the auditor to meet the client's reporting deadlines. As well as you are well organized, you're able to meet those particular deadlines because you have a clear roadmap on how things need to be undertaken. The next, it shows the time covered in each area of the audit. And next, show the level of the staff who will do the work. And therefore, it shows that all the audit matters are addressed within the required time. And next, the budget shows the charges per hour and the total amount of each audit area. It assists the auditor in costing the audit. Then the last one, it facilitates faster completion of auditor work. And after discussing those process of the audit planning, that will bring us to the end of this topic of auditor planning. So we can just look at one question before we move on to the next chapter. One question. There's one question. This question is on April 2022. April 2022. April 2022 is question number 1B. April 2022, question number 1B. April 2022, question number 1B. April 2022, question number 1B. Question number 1B. So the question reads as follows. Highlight three shortcomings of using standardized audit programs. Highlight three shortcomings of using standardized auditor programs. Highlight three shortcomings of using standardized auditor programs. So we have the shortcomings, the limitations there. We have those limitations sample. So that's a question we can easily tackle. We can easily tackle. So that will now bring us to the end of that topic on audit planning. So we need to go to the next topic, which is audit documentation. Audit documentation. That should be topic. Is it 11 or 10? 10. Yeah, topic 10. Topic 10, audit documentation. Audit documentation. Audit documentation. This is done as per the ISA 230. ISA 230. Audit documentation. ISA 230. For those who are online, there's certain notes on this audit documentation in the wall WhatsApp group. We have all the documentation notes there. Consultant, people per group. So audit documentation, that's our topic 10, audit documentation. Still have a way to go. These are topic 10, one was about 6. Still have 6 to go. Let's start it and go. 6 more to go. So the audit documentation, so many we shall struggle with when how far we can go. In fact, should just be the part of the planning audit documentation. Those are very important area. So as auditors, they perform procedures. Auditors are required to express an opinion. That's the main objective for an audit, to be able to express an opinion on the financial statements. For this one to happen, auditors must have what you call evidence. They must have audit evidence. They must have auditor evidence. So how do they obtain audit evidence? They obtain audit evidence by performing what you call procedures. They have to take certain procedures to obtain auditor evidence. So this audit evidence is a material information. Is a material information or maybe the fact. And for that case needs to be documented. It needs to be documented in working papers, what you call the audit working papers. Audit working papers, all this evidence obtained by the auditor and needs to be documented, either through the procedures or sometimes we also make conclusions. So any conclusion made by the auditor also needs to be documented. Any judgment arrived by the auditor also needs to be documented. And now what you call any evidence. This evidence is very important as far as maybe the future work is concerned. Whether the importance of this audit evidence or the audit documentation, like one knows about future reference. The future reference. The other one, they also form the basis for planning for the future audit, planning for the future audit. Another one, they can also facilitate the review of an audit work if you have these working papers. They also the basis of determining audit fees to be charged, auditor fees. They also provide evidence of the worker done, evidence for the work done. You get them for the audit working papers. They're also very important for defending auditors. For defending auditors, for example, in a court of law. The working papers are also based on issuing what? Instructions. Instructions to the engagement team or maybe the other persons. They also help the auditor to understand the nature of the client entity. So the ISA 230 requires auditors to document these working papers and to be maintained for a sufficient period of time. So auditors cannot do their job without documentation. It has a requirement of the ISA 230. In fulfillment of the professional bodies also require auditors to be able to do. So they have a responsibility of documenting all important or material information and the facts that they come across. So these working papers can be either in the physical form or it can also be in electronic form. Like nowadays, people using the tech to put up how much of the working papers or the documentation is the working, in the electronic media. So let's go through this topic 7 on our handout from page 1. On page 1. So according to IS 230, the auditor should adequately document all the materials that are relevant to the audit in working papers. So all the materials relevant in the audit, relevant to the audit in the working papers. So working papers refers to all the materials prepared, collected, and retained by the auditor in connection with the audit. So the working papers are prepared, they are also obtained, and they have to be retained by the auditor. So the working papers may be in form of data stored on paper, electronic storage media, or other storage media. Audit documentation is the record of all the audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and a conclusion the auditor has reached. So that's the definition of the term audit documentation, just a record of the audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusion the auditor has reached. So what's the importance of audit documentation? One, it provides evidence of the, it provides evidence of the audit basis. Provides evidence for the, it provides evidence for the, it provides evidence. It provides evidence of the audit basis. Yeah, that's okay. It provides evidence of the audit basis for a conclusion. Number two, it provides evidence that the audit was planned and conducted in accordance with the issues. Three, the working papers assist in providing direction and supervision to the staff. Four, it makes the staff accountable for the work they have performed, that they own up the work they have done. Five, it facilitates the review of the work done. Six, the working papers can be used for training new recruits. Seven, they are used to control the current year's audit. Next, the working papers can be used by the auditor as a defense in litigation against him. Nine, preparation of the working papers was the auditor to adopt a systematic approach to the audit, which enhance the quality of the audit. Then 10, the working papers can assist in investigation into the financial affairs of the client company. Then 11, the working papers can be used, not sued, but can be used. The working papers can be used, not sued. The working papers can be used as a base for negotiating the auditor fee. 12, it facilitates the subsequent year's auditor planning. Then the last one, it retains a record of matters that may continue to be important in the future audits. We have the qualities of good working papers, the qualities of good working papers. So as auditors maintain the documentation, the ISA remind them the qualities or the essential features of good working papers. One, they should be as complete as possible. They must contain all the necessary details. They must be detailed enough. They must be detailed enough. Having all the conclusive details. Having all the conclusive details. Next, they should be properly indexed. EU in this idea for the purpose of what? Maybe retrieval of a record from the file. Just for cross-checking purposes, to facilitate cross-checking purposes. So the working papers needs to have an index, your index, to make a comma the primary key for locating where a certain a working paper has been stored. The primary key for locating or retrieving a certain documentation where it has been kept. And next, any simple use must be clearly explained. So any simple use of those working papers must be clearly explained. Auditors are auditing procedures. Auditors are auditing procedures. Auditors are auditing procedures, and for that case, they perform certain functions. Now, these are functions of procedures or the flow. These are the flow of accounting document within the client system. So sometimes they're compelled to use what? The symbol. So any symbol used and needs to be clearly explained. Like this one up, we show Kwamba there was a cross-checking. There was a cross-checking of a transaction. Symbol like this one up will be showing Kwamba there was maybe casting of accounting document. A casting of accounting document was done. A symbol like this very bold line, and this continuous very bold line, we show Kwamba there was a strong internal control system in place. Those procedures up, it implies there was a strong internal control system in place. A symbol with a broken line, which is an arrow, a broken line, tell Kwamba there was a weak internal control system, a weak internal control system in place. A symbol like this, a symbol like this one up, I think. Like that, we talk about the also merging of some records or documents. There's some merging of certain documents of the records in the client system. So any symbol use must be clearly explained. Next, that they should be properly headed. Yes, those working papers need to be labeled, having a title, very easy to get to know what are the contents of those particular working papers. Next, they should be properly bound. That means they needs to be kept firmly together, either in a box file, a spring file. Next, they should be well secured and a key and so very important. The relationship between the auditor and the client is all about trust. And trust comes if auditors are able to maintain that confidentiality. So the clients want to be guaranteed any working papers or documentation that comes from their end will be kept securely. So there must be physical measures, a key and lock. Next, number 7, they should be prepared neatly and tightly so that they clearly and concisely and logically show the schedules, procedures, results of the test. Lawful next, any personal judgment must be clearly explained. And next, they should be kept for a sufficient period of time. The time is missing up. They should be kept for sufficient period of time. They should be kept for a sufficient period of time. Between maybe 5 to 7 years. Either 5 to 7 years. That's what considered to be sufficient period of time. So auditors are obligated to maintain those working papers for between maybe 5 to 7 years. Okay, next. Okay, we go to examples of audit documentation or examples of the working papers. So which are these examples? Audit documentation may be recorded on paper or electronic or other media, e.g. audit programs, analysis, issues, memorandum, summary of significant matters, circularization letters and their responses, a checklist, correspondences including emails concerning significant matters, copies of entities, records such as contracts and agreements, etc. The 9 letters of representation, letters of internal witnesses. I'd love to know what are the ways auditors can use to obtain the working papers. Which are the methods used by the auditor to obtain these working papers? 1, making copies of important documents. Yes, making copies of important documents. Another, recording all the procedures and results obtained. 3, recording all the questions raised and the responses obtained. 4, by taking notes of the important areas of the client's entity. 5, keeping copies of communication with the client. 6, filing reports of experts. 7, keeping responses obtained from third parties. Then the last one, scanning important documents of the client. So those are the methods of obtaining working papers. So before to proceed, we can look at some few questions. So check these questions in December 2022. December 2022. December 2022. December 2022. Question number 4B. 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 December 2022, question number 4B. December 2022, question number 4B. Question number 4B. So the question raised like this: is a 230 audit documentation requires auditors to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements on a timely basis. Describe 4 benefits of documenting audit work. Describe 4 benefits of documenting auditor work. So what are the importance of audit documentation? Very simple. Is only 4 free marks there. So we're back in the 96. Is only 4 free marks. Back in the 96. By 2000, video question 4. Video question 1. Those one we have still. The next question, next question is on August 2022. August 2022. August 2022. August 2022. Question number 4, part A, Roman 2. August 2022. Question number 4. Question number 4. A, Roman 2. So I'll start by year part 8, the case study part of it. So raised like this, your firm is the process of auditing a client dealing in actual services. Your auditing lacks sufficient expertise in the field of actuarial services. In this regard, the audit manager has recommended engaging a management expert as a source of auditor evidence. You are required to maintain the working papers for this exercise. For the exercise. You are also required to maintain the working papers for the exercise. So Roman 2, we test Roman 2, you part 1 of your final battle. So evaluate 4 features of the audit working papers that will be required to maintain. Evaluate 4 features of the audit working papers that will be required to maintain. Your question in a test note. Yes, here qualities of good working papers. 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 That's what that question is testing. Like they should be as complete as possible. They should be properly indexed. Any symbol used must be clearly explained. They should be properly edited. They should be properly bound. They should be well kept, so well secured under key and so let's take some famous break. Then when we come back, tuangalie organization of the working papers.
Mama baby to me. Hey. You can see.
Hello, vipi? Hello? Poa. Unaweza kumpata babu? Je, unaweza kuongea na babu? Andika haiendi through. Haiendi through. Haya, sawa. Hello. Unamsaidia? Unaweza kuuliza maswali?
So let's continue with the organization working papers. So there are two files upper, permanent file, then the current file. Just need to know what is contained in the permanent file and after what you call the current audit file. So permanent audit file, the long-term importance. Any working papers of long-term importance shall be stored in the permanent audit file. And after any working papers of short-term importance required for maybe just 1 year, the first stored for the current auditor file. So we look at your batch, we have two files on page 2. Organization working papers. The working papers are put in a files, which are classified into 2, permanent audit file, the current audit file. So permanent audit file, this file is used for putting the working papers that have long-term importance to the auditor. Their purpose may go beyond the current years in audit. It can be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the terms of the audit engagement. Then the purpose document information which is of recurring value regarding appearing the financial statements. Then 2, to document information of permanent nature regarding the client. Then 3, to give the audit staff who are auditing for the first time information regarding the client's affairs and the nature of the audit. So the contents of the permanent audit file: 1, copies of the client's total documents, such as the articles of association and memorandum of association, certificate of incorporation, a list of shareholders. Then 2, other statutory materials such as the copies of the Companies Act, NSC regulation. Then 3, copies of the documents of continuing importance irrelevant to the auditor, such as the engagement letter. Then 4, the client's physical and postal address. 5, list the company lawyers, bankers, or brokers, insurance broker, and advisors. 6, the organizational structure showing the top management functions and division of responsibilities in the company. And 7, the description of the entity's business and its operations. 8, copies of important client legal documents such as contracts, lease agreements. And 9, a brief history of the company and a summary of the annual accounts. The number 2, current audit file. This file is for putting the working papers that have short-term importance to the auditor. So the purpose to provide a record of the work planned in the current years of audit. Then 2, to detail the work performed, including the procedures that followed, tests performed, information obtained, and the conclusion reached. Then 3, to enable any person, especially the audit reporting partner, reviewing the audit to satisfy himself that an adequate examination of the financial statements has been carried out. Then the current content, copies of the current year's financial statement duly signed. 2, a schedule of each item included in the income statement and comparative. Then 3, a schedule of each item included in the statement of financial position and comparatives. Then 4, the audit plan and audit programs. 5, for record of the question raised and the answers obtained. 6, internal control questionnaire. 4, a copy of the management letter. 8, the letter of representation. Then 9, copies of circularization and letters. Then you have the factors influencing forms and contents of working papers. So, 1, the nature of the audit engagement. Is it a long-term audit? A short-term audit will influence the form and the content of the working paper, the size and complexity, the size and complexity, the size and complexity of the entity. Like I'm big, more work will be done because with so many procedures required to be undertaken, and that will also influence the working papers, content and form. Then the nature of the audit procedures to be performed, the identified risk of material misstatements, significance of audit evidence obtained. 6, the nature and the extent of exceptions are identified. 7, the specific audit methodology are used. 8, the nature and the condition the client ICS and accounting system. Like how much per week, more procedures done. If it's very strong, lesser procedure done, and that will also influence the form and the content of the working papers. Then the need in the particular circumstances for direction and review. So then you go to the limitation of gathering working papers. So lack of cooperation from the client staff and management. 2, lack of cooperation from the third parties, e.g. non-replies to circular letters. 3, it may be expensive and time consuming. 4, technicality of the client's business. Then 5, incomplete record. 6, weaknesses in the client system, such as supporting documents. So weakness in the client system, such as lack of supporting documents, such as lack of supporting documents, such as lack of supporting documents. That's what is missing there, lack of supporting documents. So a reason why the auditor may refer to the previous year's audit working papers, or will the auditor refer to the previous year's audit working papers? So 1, obtain background knowledge about the client. Yes, for that knowledge and understanding of the client entity, they may require the previous year's audit working papers. 2, to establish the basis of planning the current year's audit. 3, to check the difficulties encountered in the previous year's audit. 4, to identify the queries that were raised and were not cleared the previous year. 5, to check the reporting framework applied by the client. 6, to confirm that the misstatements identified in the previous year's audit have been corrected. Then 7, to avoid bothering the client's management and staff with the issues that have already been represented to them. So to on the 2 main types of our working papers, the standardized and now the automated working paper. Standardized and automated working paper. So standardized is the same as the standardized auditor program, very predetermined, alafu iko uniform. Automated ile ambayo iko electronic form, it can be used in a computerized environment. So we begin the standardized. So standardized working papers was standardized working paper. So this is an approach where the auditor uses standardized pre-prepared audit manuals developed by the audit to be used for all the audits. The manual will contain, e.g., standardized audit program, standardized bank letters, standardized internal control questionnaires, standardized data circularization letters, etc. So those are the uniform documents that can be used to audit any client. They're the same working paper used to audit the client, different client procedures. The number 2 automated auditor files. So these are the computer programs used by the auditor to make documentation easy and to assist in analyzing the client's records. Such software assists the auditor in extracting data from the client's data based in analyzing such data. So the advantages, the automation, they free up storage space in the audit firm's office. They are safe, more secure, as they're not subject to damage through wear and tear. They can be transmitted electronically. There's a high possibility of sharing work between people in different remote locations. Next, they are near and easy to review. 5, they are easy to update and edit. 6, they facilitate quick assessment of risk. 7, they guarantee high level of accuracy. 8, large amount of data can be scanned and tested. 9, they encourage uniformity of work since standard formats can be saved. And 10, they facilitate faster communication of data. They facilitate faster communication of data. Then disadvantages or the challenges. One is a lack of computer knowledge. The auditor could not be having that basic IT skill to use those working papers. 2, risk of data corruption by viruses. 3, the auditor software may be should be incompatible, not compatible, but incompatible with the client software. 4, the computer software may be expensive to develop or purchase. 5, there is a high risk of overwrite data alteration. Then 6, the risk of loss of confidentiality as the data is transmitted electronically. The loss of confidentiality as data is transmitted electronically. 7, it requires a lot of computer time. Then 8, the old software may become obsolete, requiring constant updating, which may be expensive. So let's go to the part of ownership and custody of working papers. So that's used to be a contentious issue, and its ruling was made after a certain client took the auditor to court when it comes to the ownership and the custody of the working papers. The client felt that the ones who should be owning the working papers and having the custody. On the other hand, also felt that the ones who should be having the ownership and the custody right for the working paper. So this matter went to a court. There is a client who took the audit in court in 1938, and the judge ruled in favor of the auditor. However, the auditor is the bona fide owner of the working papers, and for that case, they should have a safer in custody as per the ISA 230, and by the recognized auditors to be the bona fide owners of the working papers. And for that case, they should be having the custody of the working papers. They should be maintaining the custody of the working papers. So when you go to the court, you have to give the facts. So auditor will compare the facts, client will compare the facts of their argument, where they should be the ones having the ownership and the custody of the working papers. The court ruled in favor of the auditor. The couple to the client claims, or the client is putting across why they should be the ones having the working papers. Like 1, they said that the working papers were collected from the client company. That's very right. Without the client, auditor cannot obtain the working papers. That was very correct. Those working papers were materials obtained from them. Number 2, the client had paid the auditor for the service. That's very true. Auditor cannot work without being paid for that service. There are some certain services rendered, and through that one, auditor was able to obtain the working papers. Then number 3, the auditor is an agent of the client. That's a big problem. Auditor is not an agent to the client. Auditor is an independent contractor. There is no principal agency relationship between the auditor and the client. Auditor is an independent contractor. So that argument is wrong. The other one, the working papers contain the secrets of the client. That's very true. Those working papers contain the secrets of the client. Again, under the professional ethics or the principle, auditors are bound to maintain confidentiality still. And only the exceptions when they can share those secret information to any third parties. Auditors also put their facts, like when they say one of those working papers were obtained by them, were prepared by them. That's very correct. Is the auditor who prepared the working papers. Another one, the auditor said they are allowed the right of gain. They are allowed to exercise the right of gain over those particular working papers. And for that case, they need to retain them in case the client fails to pay them the auditor fees. They have a right of lien to be exercised over those working papers. The other argument, auditor say they're not agent to the client, but independent contractor. They're not agent to the client, they're independent contractor. They're not agent to the client, they're independent contractor. The other one, they say they can use working papers to defend themselves in a court of law. They can use those working papers to defend themselves in a court of law. in a court of law. They can use those working papers to defend themselves in a court of law. Yeah, so it was held kwamba auditor and the one should have ownership and the custody of the working papers. They are the bona fide owners of the working papers as per the provision of ISA 230. So before we proceed to the quality control, let's just look at one question. Just one question. It should be November 2020. November 2020. November 2020. November 2020. Question number 1C. 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 November 2020. Question 1C. So the question reads as follows. International standards on auditing is 230. Audit documentation provides guidance to the auditors in respect of audit working papers. Is international standards on auditing is 230. Audit documentation provides guidance to auditors in respect of audit working papers. So required. Summarize the 6 factors which could affect the form and content of audit working papers. Summarize the 6 factors which could affect the form and content of audit working papers. Those answers, we have them in page 4. Page 4. Factors influencing forms and content of working papers. On page 4, the factors influencing forms and the content of working papers. The factors influencing the forms and the content of working papers. They are on page 4. The nature of the audit engagement, size and the complexity of the entity, nature of the audit procedures to be performed, identified risk of material misstatements, etc. We cannot go to your part, quality control. Quality control is 220 and ICQC 1. That's the International Standards of Quality Control 1. That's a very important area. We expect examiner can test us in this area of audit and quality control. So auditors are expected to do a good job, do a good work at the end of it. They must meet the quality desired, so the standard set that auditors should be able to attain as far as the quality of audit work is concerned. When it comes to the quality is a relative term. Quality is a relative term because just a character is an attribute. What's the quality to person A may be of a poor, what's the good quality to person A may be a poor quality to person B. However, one of the benchmark, one of the markup of a comparison of attainment of a quality. Now, within the audit environment, we have got like 3 levels of farms. To go like 3 levels of the farms. When it comes to attainment, the quality, the standards put in place, but these farms will not be the same. A farmer in Baibaba will not do the same work in terms of achieving quality as compared to a farm in Ibaba, because the level of the resources, the level of the competency, the level of the experience, the qualification may also vary. Here we have what we call the big 4 audit farms. So their quality standards are better at a higher level. A higher level. The big 4 farms, you know them, the KPMG, Deloitte & Touch, E&Y, I love the PwC. The upper 2 on the second farms are what we call the medium sized. The medium sized audit farms for this particular level. For example, the PKF. The PKF level. So they may also not be the standards are the big 4. I love upper Saturday one of them, the very small farms. The very small farms from a product of Slata and associate. Your farm, for example, maybe only two partners, or maybe one partner. Sorry, 2 partners, or just maybe 1 individual, one sole proprietor. So their standards cannot be the same as this one suffer. Here also, because of the resources, in terms of the staff, competency, and any other but which can make another farm to be at a competitive edge compared to another. Also, but at the end of it, all of them must be able to meet quality at their own level. You are required, yes, you must do a good job. That work must be the standard what expected by the professional bodies. As a member of the profession, you must be able to do a good job to minimize the liability that may arise. So that's how it is in terms of the standard of quality. It's due grace. Like if you take a coffee in Java and you take a coffee in KFC, it does not taste the same. Does it taste the same? Java and KFC. Let KFC na kuja kama inanuka kukushinda. Ingine Java inanuka nini? The real coffee, kahawa yenyewe, the original one. So standards also depends on the measures are put in place by every business, by every firm. So auditors pia wako na standard ya audit about ISA 220 provide the procedures for what auditors need to do, all the measures auditors need to undertake to achieve quality work. Now within the audit firm you've got a structure. Audit firm has got a structure. Every audit firm got a structure, but this structure might vary from one firm to another, from every one firm to another. At the lowest level here, you get people like the audit assistants, audit assistants upper, the audit clerks, auditor clerks at the lowest level here, or maybe the junior associates, junior associates. But no problem, you get somebody to audit supervisor, the audit supervisor. Part of that level, then maybe here you get what we call audit manager. Audit manager, and the very top of one, get audit partners. If it's a limited liability partnership, there will be the directors of the firm. That's a simple structure, but it varies from one firm to the other. The reason why you have this structure, it tells you the level of the responsibilities what these people are responsible for. The audit assistants, they do a lot of what you call the vouching procedures. The vouching procedures, auditing the profit and loss account items done by the lower auditor staff. Then these guys here, they can do what you call verification procedures. The verification, they can perform verification procedures. These guys are the ones who are doing what? Developing maybe audit plan, auditor plan, developed by them, auditor plan. And that's our work for responsible for what? Engagement team. Engagement teamwork. Engagement team. They take care of the engagement team. Each and every partner has got a respective engagement team. which is directly responsible for the performance of a certain audit. So it's all about responsibility and accountability. Certain level gets to supervise another and be able to report also to another level of management. Level of the management. When it comes to achieving quality or putting the procedures, either at the individual level, that individual staff, there's certain things that they need to meet, and that was on the overall farm level. The overall farm and level. So let's go to this page. On page 6 there. On page 6, on page 6. Page 6. So ICQC, that's the International Standards for Quality Controls. When the auditor accepts appointment, he exposes himself to a number of risks. So which are these risks? One, risk of giving an inappropriate opinion. It was the audit risk. Risk of giving inappropriate opinion, that's the auditor risk. Is that chance the auditor may express inappropriate opinion. Number two, the risk of damages. Yeah, people can sue the auditor seeking for compensation or damages if they do a poor work. The one, the risk of adverse publicity, that one, the reputation can also be affected, especially if that matter goes to the public domain. Next, the risk of losing the client and the future prospective clients. 5, withdrawal the practicing certificate by maybe the professional bodies. So to mitigate against the above risk is a 220, requires the audit firm to implement quality control procedures at 2 levels. They should be able to implement the quality control procedures at 2 levels. One, at the audit firm level. So at the audit firm level, there should be those measures taken to achieve quality standards. Then also the individual audit engagement level, there are certain matters to be considered there. So we have the objectives of quality control procedures. So the ISA 220 provides the objectives of quality control procedures. One, to ensure that the audit report is issued by the audit firm is appropriate in the circumstances. The end product must be of good quality. So that's why they need to follow certain procedures of quality control. The number two, to ensure that the audit firm and its personnel comply with the professional and technical standards and the applicable legal and regulatory requirements. I click on the quality control procedures at the individual engagement level. That's a very important area. You should be able to identify the quality control measures are put in place in those areas. To be able to tell what are the matters to be put or to be adhered in achieving quality in those particular areas. So there is a mnemonic which is quite very easier to help you understand those areas where quality needs to be put in place. You can use what we call the sacred. So on the sacred, it should be at least 7 or 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Sacred M is a mnemonic which can help us to identify those quality control procedures areas. The sacred M, the sacred M, the sacred M, the sacred M. So this one, here kwanza ni what we call supervision. Here kwanza ni supervision. There is somebody ambaye see our work is done. Alafu here pili is what we call the client acceptance procedures. Client acceptance. Client acceptance procedures. Client acceptance procedures. Alafu here try to see the consultation. Consultation. Then 4 is the review. Review. Then 5 is engagement team. Engagement team. Engagement team. Engagement team. Then this number you can check any what called documentation. 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 Paragraph 7 is direction. Then the last one, 8, is monitoring. Monitoring. So once we have this one, it's quite very easier to identify the procedures that can be taken across those areas of quality control procedures. The quality control and procedures. So we shall not start with this supervision. What do we do? What are the measures to be put in place to ensure competence and good supervision? Is it a very minimal supervision? Is it about overseeing the work being done? Is it about giving guidance and counseling that's required? So what's is there on the supervision? Supervision is number 4. So this is what happens in the supervision. The supervision should be continuous during the audit. The senior members of the team should supervise the work of the junior members. And why do they check that? To check whether they are following the auditor programs. They're the ones implementing the audit program. So you should be able to check, are they following the auditor program? B, to track the progress of the audit. Yes, to track the progress of the audit. Then C, to address significant matters arising during the audit. Any challenges that the members could be facing should be addressed by the seniors. Then 4, to check whether the audit staff are competent enough to carry out the work. Are they competent enough to carry out the work? The next, to identify matters for further consultation. So those are things that happens at the supervision. Then we go to the client acceptance of procedures. So when you want to get to know these factors up, just think about our topic 4 for the engagement procedures. The matters to be considered at the point of the engagement, the ethical requirements, the risk, the resources, etc. So the client acceptance procedures, number 1 there. The engagement partner should conclude on whether all the engagement procedures have been considered and finalized. This includes potential threat to the independency has been considered. The management integrity has been considered. The auditor has ensured there is no conflict of interest. The audit firm has considered availability of resources to complete the audit. Clearance has been obtained for the predecessor auditor. Then the last one, ethical requirements have been complied with. So just think about engagement topic. The matters are prior to accepting the engagement. Then you go to consultation. So consultation is now seeking a second opinion. It could come up on some problem or conditions matters. One should be able to seek what? Consultation. They are seeking a second what? A second opinion. Pertaining maybe any contentious matter or a problem. So consultation is number 5. So what happens there? The engagement partner should arrange of consultation on difficult and contentious issues. Some of the areas where consultation is required in application of a newly pronounced standard, there's an accounting standard or maybe auditing standard, how it shall be applied. Number 2, when auditing organization with the complex reporting requirements, see where there is a disagreement with the management on accounting policy. The D, where qualified opinion is to be issued. That's a bad report is to be issued. Before doing that one, we must seek legal and maybe technical advice. Must be able to consult on that particular matter. Next, we have the review. Review shall do it last. Then we have engagement team. So now putting the team together. That's number 2. The engagement team. So the engagement partner should ensure that the engagement team collectivity has the skills, competence, and time to do the audit. The engagement partner should assess the team for the following. 1, experience in similar audit assignments. You're given the job, come up with experience in a similar engagement. If not, you can be taken for training. B, understanding the professional technical standards and legal requirements. Then C, ability to make professional judgment. D, technical knowledge and expertise, e.g. in IT. Then E, knowledge of the industry. Then F, understanding of the audit firm's quality control procedures. Those are matters to be considered if the members of the engagement team do understand them. And next we go to documentation. We have just covered this is now a topic. that it must have adequate and sufficient documentation being maintained. Any judgment, any opinion, any conclusion, any evidence obtained needs to be documented. So number 6 there. All important aspects of the audit must be adequately documented, i.e., the audit procedures are carried out, the findings and the conclusions drawn. In addition, areas where consultation was sought and the conclusion arrived at should be well documented. We go to direction, Sasa. People must be directed, must be given deadlines. So the number 3 there, direction. The engagement team, not term. The engagement team, not term. The engagement team, not term, should be directed by the engagement partner and the audit senior. The engagement planning meeting should take place in which the members of the team are informed of the following. A, the responsibility, including the need to comply with the ethical requirements. Then B, the objectives of the audit of financial statements. Then C, the objectives of the audit work to be performed. Then D, risk-related issues. Then E, the general audit methodology to be used. Then the last one, how to deal with the problems that may arise during the audit. Then you go to the monitoring, which is now to oversee the work done. You must be able to check the progress of the work being done. Checking the progress of the work being done, and that appears in page 9, monitoring. This involves making a follow-up to check whether the quality control procedures are relevant and functioning effectively. So those are the procedures there, where is the areas upon that needs to be done to ensure audit work meets the quality desired. So we can, before we go to the review, the last part of it, you can check some questions sample. You want to have the examiner test questions regarding quality control. We'll check November 2015, November 2015, November 2015, November 2015, question 1C. 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 Question 1C. November 2015, question 1C. So question reads like this. In the context of international standards on auditing is a 220 quality control for an audit of financial statements, quality control for an audit of financial statements. Discuss the quality control procedures the agreement partner might consider in each of the following. 1, client acceptance. 2, engagement team. Then 3, direction. So these are the matters to be considered only for client acceptance. Client acceptance. Here, for example, just think about conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Think about availability of resources. Is a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Think about availability of resources. Think about availability of resources. Think about management integrity. Management integrity. Management integrity. Management integrity. Think about ethical and legal requirements. Ethical and legal requirements. Ethical and legal requirements. Think about professional clearance. Professional clearance. Professional clearance. Professional clearance. etc. professional clearance. It is the number 2 on the engagement team. Engagement team. So putting the engagement team in place. So what do we need to do? So our engagement team, you can think about ability to understand the client entity, ability to understand the client entity, ability to understand the client entity, ability to understand the client entity. You can also think of ability to make sound professional judgment, ability to make sound professional judgment. Another one is experience in similar work. Experience in similar work. Consider that experience in similar work. Experience in similar work. Maybe another one, knowledge of the industry. They have knowledge of the industry. Knowledge of the industry. Knowledge of the industry. They have knowledge of the industry. They have knowledge of the industry. Then direction. We are here on direction. So which matters when you consider direction? Maybe just responsibilities. May think about responsibilities. I may think about objectives of the audit or financial statements. Objectives of the audit or financial statements. Objectives of the audit or financial statements. You may also think about objectives of the audit work performed. Objectives of the audit work performed. Objectives of the audit work performed. Another one, how to deal with the audit problems. How to deal with the audit problems. How to deal with the audit problems. Another one matter, risk-related issues. Risk-related issues. Risk-related issues.
In the engagement team.
Yes.
Like understanding the plan. According to the system.
That one comes after you have accepted the engagement. So you take part of the engagement team up.
Yeah.
Oh, unasema kwa client acceptance ama kwa engagement team. Oh yeah, you can see yeah, that one you can also put as a point.
It can be under understanding the client.
So anasema oh, yes.
The systems.
Or understand the system is a part of understanding the client entity and its environment. So let me check if there is another question from that area. Like January 2022, January 2022, January 2022, January 2022. Question number 1. Question number 1B. January 2022. Question number 1B. January 2022. Question number 1B. So are we there? January 2022, question number 1B. January 2022, question number 1B. January 2022, question number 1B. It's on page 12. Page 12. Page 12. Have you seen it? Page 12. So it's really like this, in line with the ISA 220 quality control for an audit of financial statements. Describe for responsibility of an audit supervisor in relation to supervising and reviewing the audit assistance work during the audit. So what are the roles of the supervisor? Is to check where they are following the auditor program, to check whether they are following auditor program. That's why tukunai up number 4 on page 8 of our handout. You number 4 is supervision, all the supervisor does. On page number 4. The page number 4 is to check whether they are following the audit programs, to track the progress of the audit, to track the progress of the audit. The other one, to address significant matters arising during the audit, address significant matters arising during the audit, to check whether the audit staff are competent enough to carry out the work. Then the last one, to identify matters for further consultation. Identify the matters for further consultation. One of the examiner feature vitu kwa hizi papers. So one more is on this one's on May 2017, question 2B. May 2017, question 2B. May 2017, question 2B. Is on page 34. On page 34. On page 34. More your question. So the question 2B, discuss the 4 capabilities and competencies expected of the engagement team as espoused in the international standards of auditing ISA 220, quality control for the audit of financial statements. So again, nataka nini? Just the engagement team. These are matters of engagement team. What we discuss about the repetition of these matters of understanding the audited entity, able to make sound professional judgment, the experience of the similar work, knowledge of the industry. So let's end there. They're going to be to Wednesday. We shall begin with the review. So, Grace, you can pick up.